Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm joined by Joyce saying, Joyce, it's a wonderful day for Oscar. Oscar.
Is that your rendition?
That's it.
That's
me
just,
doing
just the first two lines.
That's me doing Billy Crystal. Joyce, we're starting something new here where we are going to look at old Oscar ceremonies, perhaps, and starting with the 1992 ceremony, which is the first one you ever saw. We're calling this Oscars Playback. I was overruled for re-Oscar Balls because we don't want to cease and desist from the Rewatchables podcast. So Oscars Playback.
Also, that's just like not very SEO friendly.
No, not at all. No one is searching re-Oscar Balls. But Oscars Playback, Joyce. So this is the first ceremony you watch. We would talk about this off the air. But
yes, it's the 64th annual ceremony, so honoring the films of 91. So the films of 91, the ceremony 92.
Right. An incredible ceremony. A couple of top line notes here. It took place on March 30th, 1992. So for all of us, including me, who always says, oh, this should happen much earlier, here's the Oscars. March 30th.
March Oscars, that's what I grew up with. Okay.
Billy Crystal was the host. And it was on ABC. It was only 3 hours and 33 minutes, according to Wikipedia. So, not the most short, but not actually that bad for all the stuff.
Shorter than this year's.
Shorter than this year's. And as we'll talk about, just the 50,000 times more entertaining than this year's show, which is just a disaster compared to like this classic Oscar ceremony. And was watched by 44 million people in the United States, according to Wikipedia, that fond of accurate information. So it was a big deal. Silence of the Lambs swept, as we all know, won picture, director, actor, actress, and screenplay. One of only 3 films at the time to have done all of those things.
And still the last one, the most recent.
And it was released in February of the previous year.
On Valentine's Day.
A full 13 months after its release. I think it was the first Best Picture winner to ever be on VHS tape, which was the thing at the time.
Yeah, and so the reason this was my first Oscars was because my dad had shown me Silence of the Lambs.
Wow, at 6.
Yeah. My parents let me watch whatever I wanted. There were no restrictions in my house. So
I mean, I don't know if I'd show my daughter Silence of the Lambs at the moment, but I did show her a bunch of Star Wars stuff, and she's still like, why did Yoda die? And I'm like, well, he died.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually have like vivid memory watching the film at 6, but I remember watching it, and like a ton of stuff like went over my head, but I was fine. Like I wasn't scared or anything.
So I never went to as a kid, my parents, and we didn't go to the movies very often. I could remember on like one hand, I could count the movies we probably saw in the theater. And so Silence of the Lambs, I remember they had watched on VHS because I remember like kind of like seeing them watch it. So like there is like a little bit of memory. I'm slightly older than you, Joyce, as it turns out. So I was a little more, not 6 watching Silence of the Lambs. And then I also have vivid memories of them watching Goodfellas the same way, where I was up on the steps, like watching, like peeking down.
Oh, so you weren't invited into like the living room?
No, because they're like grown-up movies, right? I was still.
No, my dad always invited me, and he would like tell me to like come watch something with him, even if it's like adult fare,
right,
when I was a kid. So yeah, so then eventually, like months later, it was like the Oscars, and then like we just watched it because it was like this movie that we watched, and also Beauty and the Beast, because I love Beauty and the Beast. So I had a lot of range as a 6-year-old.
So I was gonna say, when we started talking about this, and you're like, "Oh, it's the first one we watched," I assumed it was because of Beauty and the Beast. So you're throwing me.
I do love Beauty and the Beast, but that came out after Silence of the Lambs came out on VHS. So I saw that.
I also remember watching that. I remember watching that on VHS for sure. Beauty and the Beast.
I love Beauty and the Beast. Belle is my favorite Disney princess, and I was so annoying as a kid because Pizza Hut had dolls, like a Belle doll and the Beast doll, but you had to buy a pie to get them. So I made my mom like go to Pizza Hut and order 2 pies, and to make sure it was like a Belle doll and a Beast doll.
Wow, that's awesome. So this was a big deal. So we're going to talk about the ceremony, and we'll go through the categories. The top line thing I would say is A, great ceremony, B, incredible movies, and like hard to even argue with winners, and also what was nominated, even though there are another bunch of great movies that weren't even nominated. It just was a great year.
I
for
mean, we
movies, and
could discuss if it was an expanded lineup, what else would have gotten into Best Picture.
I think that would be great. And then the other thing that was a big deal, obviously, was Beauty and the Beast made it in for Best Picture. If you watch the Billy Crystal opening, that's actually like a big part of it, where he's like, he actually makes a joke about Fievel from American West dying by suicide. So it's a different time. The humor is a little more brusque, perhaps, than it would be here in modern times. But yeah, it was like a big thing that like Beauty and the Beast was nominated. And in his song, Billy Crystal's song parody for Beauty and the Beast, which let me see, he did the tune of, it's from Cousins from the Patty Duke show. Joyce, I'm looking for some of these Billy Crystal songs. I have to say, I'm not the greatest name that tune on American standards and the stuff that he would parody. So I'm going off a Jordan Hoffman, the contributor to Gold Derby's list he did for Vulture a couple of years ago, where he ranked every Billy Crystal song. So that's how I know it is from Cousin from Patty Duke. But he did Beauty and the Beast, and in the thing, he's like, "Oh, we're all us actors are out of work because of an animated."
So the Academy has a playlist of the ceremony, like all the categories and the opening and even the credits roll, so you could watch all those videos on the playlist. And I watched all of them last night in order, chronological order that they uploaded in, and that was a recurring theme of the night, which is the stars being pressed about not being on screen in animated movies, because Sally Field presents the Best Picture clip for Beauty and the Beast, and she makes that same crack. So
it's pretty wild to think that that was like a thing, when now it's, I guess it's similar now. We saw like they've been doing the same bits for decades, obviously, because like motion capture was a thing for a little while where people were like, us actors, we can't do it anymore, I guess. And the same with the animated movies. And now it's funny because most of the people, including Billy Crystal, is probably best known at the moment for a lot of people as a voice of an animated character. So for Monsters Inc. He's made a career doing animated voices.
Also, is that like a great gig? Like voiceover? Come on, you could do it in your pajamas. Like just great. And now like in COVID, just do it at home. Like,
the ceremony started.
The violin.
The ceremony started with Billy coming out with his famed Hannibal Lecter mask. That was like the big bit. And so we were talking, I did not watch this. I don't remember, but I do remember seeing that. And I think watching his opening, and then I probably had to go to bed, I would say, or probably
what
watch
was your first
else.
Oscars? Do you even remember your first Oscars?
I don't really, honestly. I was thinking it probably was like Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction that year, because I actually saw those movies like in the theater and was very excited about it. So that was probably it, I would say. So this one I remember watching some of, but not all of it. But yeah, I remember the opening, and Billy comes out, he does his cracks, making jokes about things that don't exist anymore. And like Orion Pictures, I think, was like a runner, at least for Jonathan Demme, right? Or whatever.
Well, yeah, because they've released, I mean, they had 4 of Silence of the Lambs became their 4th Best Picture winner. And it was in the middle of going into bankruptcy at that point.
And then Billy did his songs. I think the most, so he did, so the Best Picture nominees were Beauty and the Beast and JFK, Bugsy, Silence of the Lambs, and The Prince of Tides. And he did, I think one of his most famous songs was for Prince of Tides. He does Don't Rain on My Parade for Barbra Streisand, and makes a crack about her. Did the movie direct itself, because she was snubbed among the Best Director nominees. And that got a extended pause and a huge ovation. Barbara seemed fine with it, but probably was like a little pissed, I would say,
Yeah, well, I was also reading Inside Oscar last night.
Joyce,
that covered, every ceremony basically. And yeah, there was like, after the nominations, she obviously was snubbed, and the quote they included of her in there was that she says she's trying not to take it personally, like it's it's just emblematic of like a bigger issue, which is like, they hate women.
Right. And
like they just complete disregard for female directors. I mean, we still only have 3 female directing winners, the 3rd one this year.
Right. And also at the time we were talking about this, not the most precursors, but the Golden Globes, when they existed, actually mattered at this time. She was among the nominees there for Best Director. So it was somewhat of a surprise.
The Globes have always supported her, and she got the DGA nomination as well.
So pretty egregious snub, as it turns out. But again, if you look at the Best Director list, I could put her in there, but I mean, it's still tough. It was just a great year.
It's a great lineup, because also John Singleton, youngest directing nominee ever, a 24.
Right.
Like he made it in, and the movie was not nominated for Best Picture. This is also back, obviously Field of Five and Best Picture. So there was a lot closer of a link between those two categories.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's actually,
No, go ahead.
more like, it's like atypical that like two directing nominees are not represented in Best Picture.
And this is one of the things, like you said, we'll talk about the expanded lineup here, because John Singleton, first Black director nominated and youngest director at the time nominated, and then Ridley Scott got in for Thelma and Louise. It's funny watching the again, just time is great and it's so wild, but going like when you see the clips of how young Ridley Scott looked on the set of Thelma and Louise, it's just wild that he's still churning out like movies, like he's still going at it. It's awesome. 30 years later. House of Gucci and Napoleon.
Your Best Picture nominee for next year.
A future Best Picture nominee. Joyce, before we go on, I just want to correct. Apparently, we were talking about Armageddon Time last night, and I was like, wow, Anthony Hopkins does not play Fred Trump. He just plays like a grandfather figure in that movie, it seems like. So I was incorrect earlier. Speaking of our previous 2023 predictions.
So does that change your predictions for next year at all?
No, he's still in. And Anthony Hopkins was like the star of this ceremony. So Billy comes out dressed as Hannibal Lecter and walks right up to Anthony Hopkins and does like a kind of, it was a funny, when you watched it, I just felt like he had no end for the bit. He gets wheeled out with the mask and then everybody's like laughing. And then he walks out to Anthony Hopkins and he tries to do like a Hannibal Lecter voice, Billy, and is like, I'm having the Academy over for dinner. And then Anthony Hopkins is like, sounds good to me, or whatever he says. I don't even know.
He asks him, would you like to join me or something? And Anthony Hopkins says anytime. And
then he just walks back up on stage and there's like no end to the bit and he has to take the mask off. It's just like so silly. And then he does his whole opening monologue and the songs and stuff. Yeah, it was like, so the show itself I thought was great compared to this year's show. Just like
the show is incredible. I'm a big fan of the 90s ceremonies because it was just a lot more glamorous and they really lean into cinema and what they were celebrating. Like they were not ashamed of movies and its creators and craftspeople like they seemingly are now. If I don't think they did in this ceremony, but if you recall in the 90s, they used to do like fashion shows for the costume design nominees. Like that's great. And they had very elaborate musical numbers in this ceremony.
That was awesome. So you had found a couple of things with not a lot of music rights, it seems, on the Academy YouTube page, Joyce.
No, they don't include the performances.
But we found a
they
couple
haven't splurged for those.
We found the Beauty and the Beast ones, and they're like elaborate and lavish, and it looked like literally like a Broadway production.
Those performances are like one of the few things I actually remember from watching the ceremony, just because like I love Beauty and the Beast.
It's awesome.
I didn't remember much else from this, but those performances, because they have 3 nominated songs.
Awesome. And that was another big deal that Angela Lansbury references, like when she comes out to introduce Be Our Guest and Belle, that it's like there's 3, and then she comes back later to do a fourth, the third song. Great.
And it's like a remix, I guess. Well, it's the same song, but it's like her version of Beauty and the Beast, like Mrs. Potts, and then the pop version of Celine Dion and Peabo Bryson.
Yes, and another trip seeing young Celine Dion at the Oscars before Titanic. Just love that, and it's just a great performance. They had like everything about it. I felt like it was so tight. It felt so. The things about the ceremony that stood out to me, and again, we kind of talked about this, and who knows this year the difficulties of getting famous people to come with the pandemic and all these different things and what was nominated, but. Man, you watch that Oscars and it's just like every famous person is at this Oscars, right? Like everybody's there. And now it helps that a lot of the movies are stacked with some of the most famous actors of the time. But like it just felt like Liza
Minnelli was there 30 years ago, just as she was here 3 weeks ago.
Amazing. And we'll talk about Kevin Costner announced Best Director like he did this year. It was just like way more, I think you said like just way more glamorous and much more pomp.
And there was when they were like going to commercial break, the announcer guy, like he said like, oh, and how like Hollywood, like the next segment is like gets more glamorous with Audrey Hepburn, Demi Moore, and Sylvester Stallone. Like that's your trio when you think of glamour.
I mean, that's pretty dope. And like
Yeah.
this year is just like, here's, you know, Jacob Elordi from Euphoria. No offense to Jacob Elordi, who I love on Euphoria, but it's a little bit of a
He
step.
got to present best visual effects with Rachel Zegler, who wasn't even going to the Oscars 6 days prior. So
it's a little bit of a step down from Audrey Hepburn. And
Audrey Hepburn looks amazing. Oh my God.
So that's one of the things we're operating on. And then, I mean, the other thing is just these movies are awesome. And then the ceremony also did a Thalberg Award for George Lucas. So that was, you know, another.
It was, and it was presented by Steven Spielberg. And it was just funny because like he's 30 years later, Steven Spielberg is still presenting awards, like honorary awards or whatever, to George Lucas because he just did it at PGA.
It's amazing.
Also, Steven Spielberg, great hair in that clip.
He looks so great. It's so funny seeing him young. And then even like I'm going through the presenters, it's like, boy, oh boy, just a murderer's row. You have I'll just read off some of the names here. Carl Malden did opening remarks, sure.
Well, he was the president, yeah.
Yes. Whoopi Goldberg for supporting actor because she won the previous year for Ghost. Joe Pesci did supporting actress, which was really actually fun seeing him at the Oscars because I know he hates that and like he barely gave a speech for Goodfellas. And
he said more presenting than he did in his speech.
He did. Annette Bening was there presenting art direction, which I know you talked about as like kind of a party foul because she's a Bugsy star.
Bugsy won that. And I am not a fan of actors presenting categories in which their film is nominated. If you
kind of a flop. And we saw that actually multiple times because Kevin Costner does it for director later when his film is JFK for Oliver Stone, who does not win. Nicole Kidman does Everything I Do It For You. She introduced great. Antonio Banderas and Sharon Stone promoting The Specialist, I would imagine at the time. Wasn't that it? Or Assassins? Which one was she in with? Or am I conflating two different movies? I actually am conflating two different Stallone movies. Wow,
yeah.
Joyce, that's awesome. Assassins has Antonio Banderas, and The Specialist, I believe, has Sharon Stone.
But also, wasn't Assassins like years later?
94 and 95 they are. So we're predating a little bit of a Stallone renaissance there. Hilarious though that they're together. Denzel did the best picture of JFK. Dope. Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon for best editing. Dana Carvey and Mike Myers, they rolled out off of Wayne's World for best live action short. They did animated. I think you sent me a screen grab of this. Belle and Beast and Chip for animated short film.
Yes. I remember this too.
That was like a thing, right? When we put like cartoons and like with real people around it.
They should bring that back. When was the last time they did it recently? I know
they did
like Toy Story?
Shrek. Well, maybe Toy Story, but I know they did for Shrek when it won, right? Remember they cut to the crowd and it was like the first.
Yeah, but that was also 20 years ago. But was it? They did it for like Toy Story 3 or maybe. I don't know.
Demi Moore and Sylvester Stallone presented awards. Daryl Hannah and Edward James Olmos. John Candy did another award. Tom Hanks, Spike Lee and John Singleton.
Award,
Yep. Spike Lee and John Singleton. Sally Field for Best Picture, like you mentioned. Richard Gere did Best Cinematography. Laura Dern and Diane Ladd both nominated, right? For Ramblin' Rose did Best Visual Effects. Patrick Swayze, sure. Robert Duvall, Angelica. It's just like Shirley MacLaine and Liza Minnelli presented Best Original Song. What?
And then Michael Douglas? This whole bit about like how they need to like do a movie and they should invite like that funny girl in the audience. And I was like, another Babs reference. So Babs got a lot of screen time.
Here are the last five presenters. Michael Douglas for Best Actress, Jessica Tandy for Prince of Tides Best Picture, Kevin Costner, and then Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor do Best Picture. I mean, that is like, boy, oh boy.
Yeah, they brought out the big guns.
I mean, like compared to this year, it's no contest. So it was a different time, Joyce, 30 years ago. So why don't we go through? Do you want to we'll go through the nominations, and then you had a lot of good information because you actually are researching more than I am.
Because I read a chapter last night.
A chapter of a book. Reading is an important thing, and about like what the season was like. But Bugsy had the most nominations with 10. JFK had 8. The Prince of Tides and Silence of the Lambs had 7. Beauty and the Beast, Terminator 2, Thelma and Louise had 6. The Fisher King had 5 with Hook. Just LOL that it had so many. Backdraft, Barton Fink with 3, and then Boys in the Hood, Cape Fear, Fried Green Tomatoes, Rambling Rose, and Star Trek 4. Or I'm sorry, Star Trek 6, I guess. Yeah, The Undiscovered Country. Wow. So those are the movies that got nominated with more than one nomination. The Silence of the Lambs won 5, Terminator 2 won 4, Beauty and the Beast, Bugsy, and JFK all won 2.
Yeah, that I don't think in general most people have issues with any of these winners. This is one of those years where, especially with Best Picture, I think like 99% of people would say they got this right. Like no notes.
So it's JFK is like honestly one of my favorite movies. I've seen it like so many times, and I'm sure you're not surprised because I'm a total lunatic and a conspiracy nut. But it's a great movie, and Oliver Stone is problematic now, but he was a great filmmaker back then.
I mean, they thought this was problematic then.
It was definitely like a wacky movie. But yeah, even me as the JFK stan, Silence of the Lambs is like unbelievably good. Just there's like no notes at all. And all of these movies are actually good. I guess the top 3 for me would be like Silence of the Lambs, JFK, and Beauty and the Beast. Bugsy and Prince of Tides, I'm not sure I've really like spent a lot of time with in the last 30 years. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I would say the only movie of the Best Picture nominees I've seen more than once are Silence of the Lambs and Beauty and the Beast.
Wow.
Yeah, JFK was fine. Like I'm not a huge fan like you are. And I don't think Bugsy and Prince of Tides have aged well. Like who even talks about them? No.
Bugsy feels like one of those movies that like at the time was just like, this is like an Oscar, you know what I mean? Like it's like an Oscar.
Oh yeah,
movie.
for sure. And I think like that would be the safe pick. Like people would like, especially after nominations, it leads with 10, like you would think, oh, like it's gonna win, right? And usually it not these days, but back then, like if you're the nomination leader, you're probably winning.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, like it's like that kind of classic, like I mean it's like Hollywood adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's less of like a gangster movie and more like the way they sold it was like a romance between like his character Warren Beatty and Annette Bening, and you know they got married after this.
That was my memory of it is that was like the big thing is that like Warren Beatty and Annette Bening were like together.
Yeah, he
and
finally
like,
settled down.
Like this was like a thing, and it had like a lot of, you know, obviously Barry Levinson directed an Oscar winner for Rain Man. A gangster movie though, like that kind of paled in comparison to maybe like Goodfellas or even like the God, like you know what I mean? Like it's like we've seen these kind of
but I think that was like the notion that, you know, like Goodfellas didn't win because it was like too much of a gangster film,
right?
But this one was like less of that,
right?
And like more of like the Academy's alley. That's what I've always understood it as, but it never really took off, I guess. Even like, yeah, and like I don't know anyone who watches it like now.
I actually got to be honest, I was surprised it even won 2 awards because I feel like if this was like the current, like that's a movie that I think now would just go 0 for 10, kind of Irishman style, where it's like there's no real reason to get, even though I'm sure like the art direction and the costumes are dope. It's like I think nowadays they would just be like, no, we don't need. There's no, like you've said a lot. There's no pressure or imperative to like give it an Oscar, basically.
Yeah.
Like, and I think at the time maybe there was a little more of that being like, well, you know, I want to spread the wealth. Bugsy, it's like got 10 nominations, it's got to win something. Whereas now I think it would just be like blanked.
Yeah, I can see that. It's definitely a movie of its time, right? Like if it had won Best Picture and maybe 1 or 2 other awards, it would just kind of I feel like get lost in the history books there. It's like, oh, that one, and then obviously it'll be like, I can't believe like Silence of the Lambs didn't win Best Picture.
Right. Kind of shocking that one. So it was the first horror movie, technically, and putting it in quotes. I guess it's a horror movie that won. And
it's a genre movie.
Genre movie came out so much earlier. So you were saying it. So it didn't really win. At the Golden Globes were a precursor. BAFTA was around, and then it had the PGA and DGA. So it won PGA and DGA.
Well, BAFTA was just after.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that right.
It existed.
It existed. So
SAG did not exist.
So one PGA and DGA. Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
Not the Golden Globes. So if you were watching that show, maybe and you only saw the Golden Globes, maybe you're like, oh, it's a surprise that it won. At the same time, like watching the show, it doesn't feel like anybody expected anything else to win. Do you agree with that? Like, I just
No.
didn't get the sense that it was a surprise, any of its wins.
So yeah, so the only Globe in one was for Jodie Foster, so it lost everything else.
Right.
Like it lost the all the categories in one, the other categories in one for the Oscars, basically.
Right.
And yeah, like you got even when the opening with Billy Crystal, like it got a huge applause when he came out in the Hannibal Lecter mask, like, and then he did like the whole thing with Anthony Hopkins, and that got a huge applause. And then you can even when they're presenting Best Actor, you could just hear the applause
He
for
got
him. And then when he won, everyone was so happy.
he got literally a standing ovation. Anthony Hopkins. It was like an incredible. Like he's the only. I think he might be the only winner of that night to receive a standing ovation from at least the actors.
I think there was another one, but I don't remember what it was for. Maybe it was for like one of the. Maybe it's for like George Lucas or something.
I think it was. I mean, like Anthony Hopkins. It was like this is like the moment to give Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, they were like totally into it, and it kind of reminded me of like Parasite, really, because it was like, you know, very early on, no one would expect either of those films to win, like even if you really love it, but it's just it on paper it looks like there were just so many things against it, working against it, but people love that movie, both movies. And in Sounds of Lamb's case, it came out so early, so you just have to assume that most of the members had seen it by then, because you know it came out on VHS that fall. So it's like they don't even have to worry about sending out screeners in the winter or like VHS tapes back then, you know, and like getting people to go to the theater to see it.
Yeah, I think I think the Parasite comp is really good because also it just is like it was like a cultural touchstone, right? You know what I mean? Like he did the joke, like the reason Billy Crystal was able, not just because it was going to win or maybe Anthony Hopkins was going to win, but the reason he does the Hannibal Lecter joke at the beginning for 45 million people watching this is because everybody instantly goes, oh, Silence of the Lambs. It was like a cultural phenomenon. And these other movies are not cultural phenomenons, I would say. JFK was definitely like a big deal, certainly at the time, just because of like the controversy around it and stuff. And Beauty and the Beast obviously is popular, but none of these movies were like Silence of the Lambs.
I mean, Beauty and the Beast is great. I love it, but it was obviously fifth here. Like, I don't think, I think a lot of people like would not, you know, just based on the jokes of that night, like, I don't think they would vote for an animated movie to win.
No.
Best Picture.
So you want to go through what the following 5 would be if we had a set 10 here before we go into the other categories?
So I think Thelma and Louise, since Ridley got the nomination, and you know both Gina and Susan were nominated and it won original screenplay.
So that seems like it was the 6th, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably 6th. Boys in the Hood, I guess.
So I was wondering that it got 2 nominations, I believe, right?
Yeah,
so
like both for John Singleton.
I think it would have gotten in. I don't know that. I think
it would probably be really well if it's a sliding scale. I don't know if it would get in, but it was like a hard 10. I think it can get in.
Let's say it's a hard 10, so I think it would get in. So that gets us to 7.
That's 7.
I think T2 actually would get in on 10.
Yeah, Terminator 2.
It had a lot of. It was obviously the biggest hit of the year, another cultural phenomenon, and then obviously won 4 Oscars, all in the tech categories. This was like a pre-James Cameron. Let's get James Cameron an Oscar moment.
Oh my God. So the visual effects speech, one of the guys, the last one actually, he's like thanking James Cameron. He's like, we got to get Jim Cameron one of these soon. I'm like, if you only knew.
Just wait another 7 years and you get it. Yeah, no, I think so. Terminator 2, if that gets in, that's 8, right? Or 7? No, that's 8.
Yeah, so that's, we added 3. So I guess like Fisher King.
So I think you're left with the option to be Fisher King or Barton Fink, perhaps, which won the Cannes and was the nominee here. Fisher King, certainly, obviously Mercedes Rule won supporting actress, and
Robin Williams was nominated.
I mean, everything else, I don't know. Cape
Fear. I don't know what else would.
So the top movies of the year, box office wise, were T2, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which I definitely saw in the theater and really loved.
Love Robin Hood.
Great movie. Beauty and the Beast, Hook, Silence of the Lambs, JFK, Naked Gun 2.5, which I also saw in the theater, The Addams Family, Cape Fear, and Hot Shots. So a lot of like frivolous things. I could see Cape Fear being an option just because of the Scorsese pedigree and De Niro is nominated, but I don't
Yeah,
think they
and Julia
really
Lewis got into.
didn't really
Maybe,
love the movie.
I guess.
That would be 9.
Right. How many did we add?
We've added
That's
Boys in
9.
the Hood,
Thelma and Louise,
Thelma and Louise,
T2,
T2, Cape Fear, and then we have one left basically. So it could be
Fisher King, right?
Fisher King. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
so
want to do
that's 10.
Fisher King? That makes sense because I think Terry Gilliam, didn't he win or was nominated at one of these things? Let me see. Scintillating stuff here. I lost my page, Joyce. Hold on. I feel like he was Terry. Well, whatever. We'll fix that in post.
Or they not for Fisher King.
No, not at best director, but I feel like he was on like a precursor list. Hang on, let me see. Whatever. But Fisher King, I think, would be pretty solid. I don't know. I think that could be like the 10th.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's easier to make the list if it was the sliding scale.
Yeah.
Harder to fill out the 10, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just based on the directing nominees, it's like you would just think Thelma and Louise and probably Boys in the Hood would get in.
And then for directing, obviously we said Barbara didn't get in but I don't know who you knock. I guess I would say like Barry Levinson would be the knockout based on this, because you have Demme obviously won, John Singleton for Boys in the Hood, Oliver Stone for JFK, and Ridley Scott for Thelma and Louise, and Barry Levinson for Bugsy.
Yeah, I don't like really have a problem with this lineup. Like it's sucks that she was snubbed.
It is a great lineup.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you would probably say like John Singleton is like the easiest to remove just because he was a newcomer, like so young, and you wouldn't expect him to be nominated anyway.
But you don't want to remove him because it's like
No.
one of their actually best nominations. Like it's hard to believe.
Yeah, and then it makes sense that like Barry Levinson and Oliver Stone were nominated because they were just coming off recent wins.
Right.
So.
And Ridley for Thelma and Louise. I mean, yeah, like you don't want to knock John Singleton feels like, oh wow, we actually got one of these right for once. Like instead of like classic Oscars being like, we missed this one. Like, sorry, everybody.
The Wreck and Branch always goes their own way, and even when they're like huge snubs, like they have nice surprises as well.
So then the acting awards, Joyce, we had Best Actor, Anthony Hopkins won, like we said, standing ovation. No notes again for this. Good category though. Warren Beatty for Bugsy, Robert De Niro for Cape Fear, Nick Nolte for Prince of Tides, and Rob Williams for The Fisher King. I guess a snub would have maybe you could consider would be like Kevin Costner for JFK. But
he just won the previous year with Dances with Wolves. Not for acting, but he got 2.
I think he's great in it, but I'm like, these are great performances. I love De Niro and Cape Fear. I think Cape Fear is actually like one of Scorsese's underrated classics. It's so good, and he's like awesome in it. What a year for Nick Nolte. He had Prince of Tides and Cape Fear. Wow, way to go!
And that he won the Globe. Like Anthony Hopkins did not win the Globe for.
Well, we should talk about Anthony Hopkins' performance. Is got to be one of the shortest of all time to win Best Actor.
It's like 24 minutes. Yeah, so he could have gone supporting. I mean, this is what everyone talks about, right? Like, I mean, he would have definitely won supporting. It doesn't matter. He would have won either category.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's category fraud because I think like he is the lead actor in the movie, and it is the character who is like most important other than Clarice. So it does feel to me like it is the best. It is the lead actor of the movie. He's not a supporting part per se.
No, it's like even though his screen time is that of a supporting performer, like you just look at the numbers, right? It's on par with most supporting performances, but yeah, his impact is so great, and you're just constantly thinking about him, and the characters are constantly talking about him.
Yes, it's like that old Simpsons. Wasn't that a Simpsons joke where it's like the characters should always be talking about Pookie, right? Isn't that or Poochie? Wasn't that part of it?
Yeah, and so it's like you just it doesn't matter, like and it's like such an iconic performance. You just like as soon as he enters the frame, it's just like holy shit, like you're in, and it's unforgettable. And you could just see like in the room how much people loved it and loved him, and they were just ready to award him for this.
So he
And
had,
I think like I don't like category fraud is fun to talk about, but and I think it's more of like to be like really considered fraud. It's more like if you're a lead performance competing and supporting, because you have the extra screen time and you're probably driving the plot of the movie, whereas supporting performers don't usually drive the plot of the movie.
Right.
He actually is driving the plot of the movie. So, but it's harder for if like due to the reverse, if you're a supporting performer to compete and lead, right? Because you're already lacking the screen time and you might not be driving the plot. So it says more about you and your work and what you did if people are willing to give you an Oscar for a comparatively short performance.
So that was his first nomination, Joyce. It's hard to imagine like Anthony Hopkins not having like multiple nominations, I guess. But that was like, this is like, hey, Anthony Hopkins, we should give him an Oscar. That's also another thing I feel like. It was like a discovery almost. Even though it wasn't, because he's been acting for like 30 years before this.
Oh yeah. But like also like since he won last year for The Father, like he's one of those rare multiple Oscar winners for acting where you don't have an issue with either of his wins. Like they're like unimpeachable, right? Like two of his best performances. Like it's so rare because a lot of multiple Oscar winners, it's like you might not give it to them for like one performance or two, or maybe if they're like, 3-time winners or, 1 4-time winner, not those. But I don't think anyone has an issue with his 2 wins.
No, it's none of these. And like these are great. I mean, like you look at the nominees, it's like Robin Williams for Fisher King was like hey, good seeing you here, kind of, right? Like, we're still excited about your work. Nick Nolte for Prince of Tides, again, another like, hey, good year. De Niro for Cape Fear and Warren Beatty for Bugsy. They're major talents, but like these are not. De Niro does not need an Oscar for Cape Fear, let's say.
No, and Warren, that was all his birthday. He said he lost on his birthday. I don't know if there was like any urgency either to give him an acting award. Like obviously he won for directing Reds. But yeah, I feel like Bugsy was just kind of it eventually became one of those movies that like you said before, like The Irishman, that you more admired and respected than loved.
Right.
So
and kind of like we saw with, I mean, like honestly, like Power of the Dog is this too, where it's like got broad support across the entire Academy, but it's not going to be like something that people feel the need to let win.
Yeah, it just doesn't inspire that same type of passion. Yeah, like whatever. And it's not like none of, we talk about like crowd pleasers a lot this past season, but like none of these are really crowd pleasers. I guess Beauty and the Beast, but like,
I mean, I'd actually say Silence of the Lambs is a crowd pleaser because it's entertaining, and you're like you're into it. It's like
but it's
one
not
of the
like
most
traditional sense of a crowd pleaser.
It's actually one of the most entertaining Best Picture winners, I would say. It's like incredibly watchable. It's an easy watch.
Very watchable, very rewatchable. Yeah. But it's
almost
just something they've never honored before. So
maybe re-Oscar Paul Joyce. That does that. Make it happen.
You could go trademark that. So
I'm gonna send an email. I think that's how it works. Best Actress, Jodie Foster won again. So she was the second 2-time winner, and it was only 28 when she won. So I think she was the youngest person with youngest actress with 2 Best Actress Oscars, right, at the time of this win.
Yeah.
And just a great win. She's so good in Silence of the Lambs. Incredible. No notes. The other nominees were Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon for Thelma and Louise, Laura Dern for Rambling Rose, and Bette Midler for The Boys. I think the Bette Midler one was a surprise maybe, but she also won the Globe, I believe. So
well, yeah, in musical.
Sure, but like
I think you could probably remove her, I guess, if you're gonna drop one of them. And
who would you put in? Like,
I don't know, maybe Annette for Bugsy.
Annette for Bugsy, or I don't know who else. I mean, like, there's not a lot this year. I mean, I think if you're doing it now, I would actually make a very strong case for Linda Hamilton from T2 to be in here. She's awesome. It's a great performance. It's like an iconic performance, and you could easily put her in instead of Bette Midler. No offense to Bette Midler.
It just feels like, giving Mad Max a bunch of nominations, but not Charlize Theron. So
right, it is the pre-Charlize performance basically, and she's incredible in the movie. So that would be my fix here. Would be putting her in instead of Bette, I guess, or I mean, Laura Dern for Rambling Rose, I got to say, another one I'm not super familiar with. I've not seen a lot in the last 30 years.
You know, they just had the mother-daughter narrative. They're the first
Yeah.
mother-daughter nominated in the same year. So, but she wasn't winning. Yeah, and then, you know, Thelma and Louise, we need to bring back double nominations in this category, because they're the last pair, the most recent pair to be nominated from the same movie in Best Actress, and there's only been 5. So,
Well, I feel like nowadays this would never happen. They would just shunt one of these to the supporting
yeah, that's
category.
what they do. Yeah.
Because like you could have said like Carol, I think was maybe like the last great opportunity for this, right? I mean, am I missing one? But I feel like Rooney Mara and Kate Blanchett could have gotten Best Actress
Rooney was
nominations.
definitely, well, the Globes put Rooney in lead, because
Right.
they were like, not having that.
Right. One Globes voice, when the Globes are voice of reason, you know there's probably something going on.
Yeah.
Who else would you put in here? I mean, Annette Bening, or like, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess Annette.
What about like Barbara Streisand?
I don't know.
For
I mean, I
Princess-
haven't seen Prince of Tides in a really long time.
No. But I mean, like she would be the other obvious like option.
I guess, yeah.
For Best Supporting Actor, Joyce, this was fun. So Jack Palance does his great speech. He's 90 million years old and he wins. That's a exaggeration, but he does his one-armed push-up. Whoopi gives him the Oscar. It's a great moment. He wins for City Slickers. He talks about how he's got poops bigger than Billy Crystal, I believe, in his
That was his opening line.
It's incredible. No F's at all. This is another kind of like, this is a fun category, but I'm like, you could actually switch out a bunch of these. And Tommy Lee Jones got nominated for JFK as Clay Shaw, Harvey Keitel for Bugsy, Ben Kingsley for Bugsy, and Michael Lerner for Barton Fink.
So this was until 3 Billboards. This was the last time there were double nominees in supporting actor, and then now we just have it all the time in supporting actor.
So nuts.
But, yeah, I understand why they nominated Tommy Lee Jones, who's like, good in JFK, but there are like at least like 4 other JFK actors I would have nominated.
So
here.
off
Like
the top of my
Kevin
head, Kevin Bacon actually should get in. He's awesome. He's only got like 1 or 2 scenes, but he's so good.
Yeah, like Donald Sutherland.
Sutherland is incredible. 1 scene. Joe Pesci is out of his mind in it. I actually would not nominate him, but still like LOL.
But it could be like that Afterglow nomination,
Right.
Like,
it could have been that for sure. I mean, Lawrence Fishburne for Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
Would you put him in supporting? Probably they could fraud him in.
Yes. Yeah.
That would have been one. I think that would have been appropriate here.
Yeah, and then also like Samuel Jackson for Jungle Fever.
That was like the big snub as well. We didn't even mention Jungle Fever, but that was a 91 movie. Sam Jackson, I don't think he would have won, because Jack Palance is just
it was like the actually one of the rare like sentimental picks, really, like, because he was like an old veteran, and it was like a comedy as well,
right?
It's like that's not really an Oscar-y type of role.
No. And he tells his great speech where he was like, he's like one of the directors on one of his first movies in the 40s was like, you're gonna win an Oscar one day, and he's like, oh, he was right. It's like very, very sweet. I think Samuel Jackson and Lawrence Fishburne both could have been in here. I think if we were doing it again, I would say probably that. I don't know who else. I'm like looking through the list of movies.
You can just fill this with like JFK actors.
Kevin Bacon, Donald Sutherland, certainly. I don't know. It's funny that like these are the ones we ended up with, and the Bugsy ones just feel like, again, like Bugsy, shrug, sure. Ben Kingsley, former winner. Why not?
But complete opposite of Gandhi.
Right. And I think Billy Crystal makes a joke about that in the opening as well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm looking through. You could have gone a lot of different ways. That's fine. But Jack Palance winning based on these nominees, actually, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. And then, like, because of his win, it just gave Billy and how he opened his speech, it gave Billy a lot of material for the rest of the night. He just kept like riffing off of Jack and like saying all these things about like, oh, he's like on the roof of like the building or something. He's like, lay off the coffee.
And then I think he opens the next ceremony by dragging Billy out, right? Isn't it a runner that they carry into the next year? I think he pulls him out on the Oscar.
Yeah. So Yeah. It's a nice win.
Good
And
win. Yeah.
and what he was nominated, what, like almost like 40 years before that?
Yeah, I think he was nominated in
Or
1952 and
yeah,
53.
that was like his last nomination for Shane, right?
Yep, 53 was Shane. For supporting actress, Mercedes Rule and Fisher King won. The other nominees were Diane Ladd for Rambling Rose, Juliette Lewis for Cape Fear, Kate Nelligan, excuse me, for Prince of Tides, and Jessica Tandy for Fried Green Tomatoes. If it was me, I would have done Juliette Lewis. No offense to Mercedes Rule. I love Juliette Lewis in Cape Fear, and it's kind of like a huge breakout. Kind of, she's hanging with De Niro in a Scorsese movie, and she's kind of owning it. It's great. It's a great performance. But Mercedes Rule won again. Another one that was not necessarily unexpected, right, Joyce? I think she had won at the Globes at the very least.
Yeah, she won the Globe. And she's a great actress, but this is one of those forgotten wins. I don't think most people can name this win, like a casual, like Oscar.
I don't think so.
Viewer, yeah. She gave a great speech as well. A lot of good speeches this year. And I guess with Juliette, you could say, like, she was young. I think she was 19. So, but we know they don't have problems of young women winning. They just have issues of young men winning.
Right.
But maybe it was also like the movie. Maybe they could only handle one like genre movie.
Probably. I think in the crowd, she's got her cornrows from Natural Born Killers. I think it must have been shooting at the time.
I guess. Yeah.
Anybody else here you thought of who would get nominated? No, Annette Bening would have been lead, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, at the Globes, they nominated their fave, Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
For Billy Bathgate. So
that was a big deal as well. That was another one that kind of like blended together with Bugsy, I feel like. So Billy Bathgate was with Dustin Hoffman. He was the lead. And I remember seeing those were always like kind of on the Blockbuster shelf next to each other. I feel like
there were a lot of gangster movies.
Yes, it's definitely a great time
back in the day
for the gangster movie. Yeah, I don't know. I was like drawing a blank on some of these who you could have nominated here. I think Nicole would have been fine. They had her at the ceremony, obviously, as like a breakout, presenter. I don't know. It was not the strongest year, I guess, for supporting actresses as well. Diane Weiss for like Little Man Tate, which got a shout out in
Jodie's
Jonathan Demme's speech. He gave a shout out to Jodie for directing.
Yeah, and I think like Jodie ended her speech like talking about Little Man Tate.
And Angela Bassett for Boys in the Hood, if we want to go down that road as well. Another kind of probably contender that if you were doing it now, perhaps. Jessica Lange, I guess, would have been lead for Cape Fear, but she also, I think Juliette Lewis is a better performance, but like that is a possibility, though maybe I'm just showing my Cape Fear bona fides or whatever. Any of the animated, you're surprised any of the animated performances didn't get nominated? No.
Well, you told me something that just blew my mind before we started this.
Which was what? That I didn't remember
that Jerry Orbach was in Beauty and the Beast.
I had no memory of it at all. I was like, who's the French guy in Beauty and the Beast? And it's Jerry Orbach doing a French accent. I had no idea. Not a clue. I know. I know. It's just
he doesn't, so, like when he performs Be My Guest on the ceremony, he does it in his real voice.
Yes.
Yeah. No French accent.
No, he opens it with a French accent.
Yeah.
But no real
great performance. We need more performances. You know what? That's what like the Encanto, like Bruno performance should have been like this year. Like
that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy to just kill this year's ceremony and like kind of be like, oh, remember when everything was good and like now it's bad.
Like it was good.
But it really was good. And you watch this, if you watch these clips like of Beauty and the Beast performances from the Oscars in 1992, they just are so well produced and so well thought out and choreographed and just like totally gets the heart of what makes the song good and like kind of applies the like a real world to the animated, you know what I mean? Like they restage it as like obviously like live action, but it's from an animated thing and it works really well. And I'm like, in Encanto, they could have easily done that. I think they tried to do that with like Dos Orguitas, but like the Bruno thing just felt like they were going for like a meme instead of like a good performance.
Yeah, and it's just like it's the way you know, the audience like area was set up with like the tables was just awkward, but like that could have just been an entire stage number and it would have been great. Like, and you could have recreated like the Casa Madrigal, like everything
It would
on
have been
stage.
awesome. It just would have
Yeah.
been like so awesome. And I mean, like, there's obviously like a million reasons why they don't do this way anymore or whatever. But man, you watch this and you're just like, this is what the Oscars, when people are like, this is why the Oscars were good. Like, this is a show that you would show and be like, this is why the Oscars were good, actually.
Yeah, like they knew how to celebrate their nominees and like the films of the year. And they also back then in the 90s, they did this year like interpretive dance to like the original score nominees, and Debbie Allen choreographed them. She did this year. So you just saw all 5 score nominees perform to interpretive dance, and it was great.
So good. So those are the acting winners. Joyce, do you want to go through some of these other ones? We don't have to spend as much time on them, but I do think it's like kind of cool.
I think they nailed the screenplay winners. Both of them also won WGA. So
Thelma and Louise, Callie Curry won for original screenplay, and obviously Ted Talley for Silence of the Lambs. The other nominees were John Singleton for Boys in the Hood and original, James Toback for Bugsy. Thank goodness he did not win, probably. Richard Gravanier for The Fisher King, and then Lawrence Kasdan and Meg Kasdan for Grand Canyon, which is just the outlier there, I guess. But I mean, sure.
It's like the sole the screenplay nominee that we were.
And then for adapted, Europa was nominated, and then Fried Green Tomatoes, JFK, obviously, and Prince of Tides. But Ted Talley won for Silence of the Lambs. No notes. Those are great winners. I think those are like all-time winners. And again, Thelma and Louise must have just missed Best Picture, I feel like.
Yeah, it had to have been 6. And you know, like one of the criticisms or whatever against it was that, you know, people thought, or like men thought of it as like a man-hating movie.
Right. 2 people we didn't mention actually for supporting actor. I think Harvey Keitel should have maybe gotten in for Thelma and Louise rather than Bugsy. Just to backtrack on that, he's so good in Thelma and Louise. And Brad Pitt, obviously no, but like, sure, why not? I don't know.
Harvey Keitel, you know, had a great run in the early 90s.
Oh my gosh.
He has the piano coming up. And yeah. So yeah, this is his Oscar nomination.
Let's look. We'll just do a quick look at this run here. It's just an incredible run. He has in 91, Thelma and Louise, Bugsy, and Mortal Thoughts, which was a Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, just trash thriller from Alan Rudolph that I've seen like a lot, and it's actually like pretty good. Reservoir Dogs, Bad Lieutenant, Sister Act. Then he's got The Piano in 93, Rising Sun, which was actually like a thing because it was like a Michael Crichton book, and Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery are in it. And then he's got Pulp Fiction in 94, Clockers in 95, Get Shorty as a cameo.
Love Clockers.
So good. From Dusk Till Dawn, he rules in. Copland, just like a great like little mini run here for him. It's kind of like petered out in the time since, so it was good to see him pop up.
And Bugsy is his Oscar nomination. So you know, sometimes it's just whatever gets it for you.
Sure.
Right.
Let's see. Want to go to original score? Beauty and the Beast won, obviously. The other nominees were Bugsy, Ennio Morricone, The Fisher King, JFK, John Williams, and James Newton Howard for Prince of Tides. No Terminator 2 in here. Again, like probably should have gotten one.
No Silence of the Lambs.
No Silence of the Lambs, even though they played the music literally all night, including in the opening. Like that's how the show opens, with the score from Silence of the Lambs. Just not nominated here. Pretty strange. Hard to argue with Beauty and the Beast score. I personally think the John Williams JFK score rules. It's like a great John Williams score. So good. And, you know, it would have been nice to see it win.
This is just, you know, the Disney Renaissance period when they just dominated the music categories.
Yep. Original song was Beauty and the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, obviously. Howard Ashman won his posthumous award. The other nominees were Be Our Guest, Belle, and Joyce. Let's stump here for Everything I Do It For You. Bryan Adams' ballad from Prince of Thieves. I'll tell you a quick story. I loved Prince of Thieves. I saw it in the theater. That was another great time for Kevin Costner. He was like the biggest star in the world, probably, or one of them. He was dragged for his accent. Remember, it was like a big deal, like that. He didn't really have a great British accent, and they kind of just gave up on it halfway through. Alan Rickman
it's sort of like how they didn't even try with accents in The Last Duel. which I
It kind of
respect.
was, but they did start with an accent, I think.
Yeah, and then it's just like you phase it out.
Kind of like a similar trick you see in Casino with Joe Pesci, where he has this Chicago accent in like the voiceover, and then the rest of the movie is just Joe Pesci. Like on set, they were just like, "It's fine, forget it, don't worry about it, Joe."
Yeah. Well, we
do
won't reshoot anything, so
yeah, we'll
it's
do
okay.
it in post. It's fine. Alan Rickman, an incredible villain as the Sheriff of Nottingham, just an all-time performance. And the song, "Everything I do it for you," and the score was so good that they actually used it as like the theme for whatever the company was. I'm blanking on the name here. Who put this movie out? Morgan Creek Productions did like their logo was the score from Prince of Thieves, which is Michael Caine's score. It's a great score. It just is so
there
good.
were a lot of just really like grand, like opulent scores back then. Like I love like 90s like music and scores. Like,
so I bought this. I bought the soundtrack on cassette tape, and
yes.
And I went. That was one of the few movies I actually remember seeing in the theater with my mom, I guess. So it came out. It was a summer release, I believe, right? Let's see, June 14th. So we must have seen it over the summer. And I had the cassette because I love this song. And I remember we went to my grandmother's house and I left the cassette in the car and it melted. And I was so upset. I was like traumatized and devastated that I like lost my beloved Bryan Adams song and the score.
Did you go back to like Coconuts to get?
I think I went back. We were probably doing Tower Records with Sam Goody, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was really upsetting. Certainly, I was
wow. When did you realize you left it in there? Did you think like you had lost it?
No, I think we must have gone. I remember we must have gone to my grandmother's house and then left it in there, and then just came out, and I was like, "Oh no, it's in there!" And it melted. This is what you had to deal with when we were a youth.
Yeah, there was no Spotify or Apple Music. Yeah,
physical media that
physical
could
media.
melt. Could melt in the hot sun.
No, but that was like, well, it didn't melt, but I had, Beauty and the Beast on VHS, obviously, in the Disney Puffy case. Remember those?
Mm-hmm, sure.
And I watched it so many times, and I wore the tape out. So then,
awesome.
like the tracking would be so messed up, and I would constantly have to press tracking on it.
Tracking.
Tracking, and the VCR would just like eat up the tape, and I would have to like open the latch and like strain it out. So, yeah, good times.
Amazing. Other one I want to look at was cinematography. So Robert Richardson won for JFK. It's a great win. Awesome.
He wasn't there to accept.
The other nominees were Bugsy, Alan Daviau, Prince of Tides, Stephen Goldblatt, Terminator 2, Adam Greenberg, and Thelma and Louise, Adrian Biddle. No Tak Fujimoto for Silence of the Lambs. Just like insane to me. How did that happen? How did he miss? Just very strange. I feel like that could have won.
Yeah, I don't know how or why. I don't.
And like
I feel like it probably just missed.
I guess so. I mean, somehow never nominated for an Oscar, but has worked on like incredible movies, including Sixth Sense and Silence of the Lambs, obviously. And I don't know. It's just very strange to me that he missed. But it gets a great shout out in Jonathan Demme's speech.
Jonathan Demme's speech is a journey, a long one, because
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then he says about like 200 uhs because he was clearly not prepared, and he kept saying like, "Oh, this won't be long," but he just like keeps continuing for like another 2 minutes. But it's cute because he does pretty much thank and cover all like the people you would expect and the important people in his life, and it's not just like a generic like list of names, like there's like some anecdotes behind them. So
yeah,
but yeah, it might aggravate some people who haven't seen that speech yet.
It's worth watching. He ends it with like, I think, a shout out to Martin Ritt and Hal Ashby as his like mentors.
Yeah.
It's a nice speech. It just is, again, I was just surprised he was so frazzled because I was like, who else was gonna win here? Who do you think was gonna win?
I mean, I guess he could have thought maybe Oliver Stone was going to win his third or Barry Levinson. I mean, yeah, like he won DGA, but I don't know back then, like how much, like, award season back then.
Right.
That I clearly was not paying attention to.
No.
It's not the same as it is now when it's like like such a cottage industry and like precursors, and everyone is just constantly analyzing every single second of like every single like critics award and like precursor ceremony. So he won that like BGA, but I don't think he like thought he could win this, I guess.
I guess
don't know.
not.
Yeah, because he didn't win the Globe, obviously. And I don't know. But so I think that was after the acting awards, right? What was the order? Where's the order ceremony?
Yeah, Corey.
Was he the penultimate award?
Yeah, it was. It was after the acting award. So
yeah, so he already saw his actors win and saw his screenplay win, his screenwriter win.
Correct.
I don't know. Maybe he felt like he could lose.
I mean, I guess maybe, but like, I don't know. So Michael Douglas gives out Best Actor. I guess Jeremy Irons wasn't available. I mean, I don't know why.
Yeah. Maybe he said no.
Maybe he said no, but everybody else came back. Kathy Bates does Best Actor for
Annie Wilkes presenting to Hannibal Lecter.
Pretty cool. And like they have like a cool moment, I think, on stage. Whoopi for obviously Jack Palance, and again Joe Pesci just hilarious for Mercedes Rule. Yeah, Mercedes Rule, I guess, gets the short trip a little when you're thinking back on the history of these wins, because you have Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, like the all-time just great, undeniable Best Actor and Actress winners. And Jack Palance has that incredible speech. And then it's like, oh yeah, and Mercedes Rule won. Like you said, I think people would be, if they're going to try to figure out who won that year, if it was a trivia, that would maybe be the one that hangs people up.
Yeah.
A little bit. Anything else, Joyce? Anything else you want to touch on here from these? Best Picture, Silence of the Lambs. No kidding.
Yeah. And yeah, so everything from what I read was like, it was still kind of up in the air. Like no one really knew like what was going to win. Like it wasn't like, there wasn't an overwhelming prediction for like any film really. Because it was
coming
like,
into the show.
Yeah, coming into the show. It was like between that and like Bugsy maybe, and like maybe JFK. So, but yeah, like cool pick. Like so unlike them. One of the few times, it's so satisfying when they get it right.
It is. We kind of like did a darter on this just to pick it, because we were like, oh, we should do the first. It was your first one you remember watching. And then I was like, oh, it's actually 30 years, which is kind of fun too. And it just so happens that it's just such a great year for movies and a great winner that it's like enjoyable to talk about. And even like the following year is Unforgiven. It's another good movie, like really fun ceremony. But it's not like you're getting a less than enthusiastic winner, let's say.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I don't even remember what I thought at the time when it won. I think I was like happy it won because it was like something I had seen, one of the two movies I had seen. So yeah, and obviously it stood the test of time, and it's still the most recent film to win the Big Five. I honestly don't know when that will happen again. Like it's obviously been 30 years and we haven't had it happen since. I think the hardest thing is to snag those two leads, because I think you have films that can win picture, directing, and writing often, but like those two leads are the hardest,
especially nowadays, because I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I think, like we said, I think Anthony Hopkins is obviously the lead, but you wonder now with the way that modern campaigns run, would they just push him in supporting and just be like, Jodie's the lead? It's just a weird, like you rarely see like just based on like the last few years, the best actor, there's not a best actress and a best actor in the same movie, let's say. Anymore.
Right. And I guess, so yeah, so As Good as It Gets won for both, but that wasn't beating Titanic for Best Picture. And then what? I guess American Beauty, because Annette lost, sadly, and it basically won everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, like anything else? I mean, like not.
Yeah, because it's usually, I mean, we know like there's not a strong correlation between the actress and Best Picture anyway.
Right.
So yeah, I'm looking at like all the Best Actress winners.
I mean, like the David O. Russell movies, you had like Amy Adams and Christian Bale nominated, but
yeah,
like,
but they were not winning.
Not winning, right? But like that was like the last that's the last one I remember. I guess that was
Yeah.
like a big
Oh, Walk the Line, but Joaquin wasn't beating Philip Seymour
sure.
Hoffman.
Yeah, it's a tough. That is definitely the trickiest one.
Yeah, like Hillary Swank for $1 Million Baby, and Clint was a complete surprise in Best Actor because he pumped out Paul Giamatti for Sideways, but Clint wasn't winning Best Actor.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Yeah,
there's
it's
not, Silver Linings, The American Hustle.
Yeah, those were the last. Like those were maybe, but again, like Bradley Cooper wasn't going to win.
Yeah, like Emma Stone, La La Land, but Ryan Gosling wasn't going to win.
Right.
Francis, I remember when people were like, Sam Rockwell could be lead.
Yes.
Billboards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's lead. Favorites, Judy, Nomadland, just Francis all the way. And
Theory of Everything, I guess, but like,
yeah, she wasn't winning. Felicity, right. Sorry.
Eddie Redmayne won.
That was Julianne's time.
Yeah, not a lot of. I mean, even like if you look at like the artists, like you could say that Bernice Bejo is a lead, but she was nominated in supporting, and like
they pushed her supporting.
So it doesn't really happen. You're not seeing that as much, and I don't know if will we ever see it again.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I guess
30 years.
Yeah, well, there was also Demme Walking. I forgot about that in '95 for like Susan won because she was like overdue, but Sean didn't win because that was Nicolas Cage. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess because also now they seem to spread the wealth more too. Yeah,
they don't seem to want to like go unless it's like a tech thing, like a Fury Road. They don't want to go too hard on like one. We've seen that over and over again.
Yeah, and it's even harder for Best Picture to win both directing and screenplay. Like sometimes it's just one of directing or screenplay to go with Best Picture. And in this case, the director of the Best Picture was not even nominated. So,
what one Best Picture? Oh, Coda. That's
right. Yeah.
Joyce, anything else here before we wrap up and say goodbye to Oscar? It was a wonderful night for Oscar.
You could sing something again next week. So
yeah, we'll pick a different one.
Should we just do all the Billy Crystal years?
I mean, we could just keep going. 93.
Because he has 9.
It's pretty good.
I know. We have to go back too because he did 2, I think, before this year.
Yeah, super problem. I mean, like we talked about this. I think just not a lot of problematic jokes in some of these, but. Pretty fun.
What are you gonna do? They're of their time.
They're of their time, and just like, man, no one had the spectacle of Billy Crystal. You mentioned this like earlier. I think the other prevailing thing I thought watching this was just not just the respect for like the craft, but like there's not an embarrassment of movies. I feel like even though I thought actually Amy Schumer did an okay job. I thought she was pretty funny, and I thought Wanda Sykes and Regina Hall were solid, but you watch Billy Crystal or any of these older ones, doesn't have to be Billy Crystal hosting like Steve Martin hosting or whatever. They're not like mean-spirited about the movies. And now it's just like, this all sucks. And we got to like dunk on everything.
Like you're dunking on The Last Duel, which was one of the best movies of 2021.
Not only that, I mean, one of the Wanda Sykes jokes early on was, Power of the Dog. It took me 7 times to watch it. And it's just like, that's pretty mean-spirited, even if you thought it was boring, which I did. You wouldn't like make that joke for like it's got the most nominations in theory. It's the best movie of the year.
It's also such a tried out joke because that's what like people who don't like it say about it, right? That's like their main criticism. And it's not also Power of the Dog was shorter than like half the Best Picture nominees.
That's the other thing that's funny. It's like it might be like it was like when they were doing those jokes for The Irishman, it felt appropriate only because The Irishman was notably long for like 3 hours, and like that was like a huge part of its like narrative was that this movie was 3 hours long, and good luck watching it. But Power of the Dog is like
2 hours and like 10 minutes.
Yeah, maybe, and like 8 of those minutes are credits. So it's like a 2-hour movie. You're really not putting a lot of time into it. Certainly no more so than any other movie. And yeah, I just thought that was like such a mean-spirited joke, and just kind of indicative of what, like you were saying, like the current vibe is that we're embarrassed about the Oscars and embarrassed about the movies. And this show is like, you know what's great? Movies.
Yeah. And also like this year's nominees, like this past season, like it was such an eclectic lineup. Like, are all these movies my favorite? No. Like I still think like the 2020 crop is stronger than the 2021 crop, but like you had a Western, you had like a musical, you had this like 70s like meandering, you know, like valley like sort of love story. You had, you know, like Kenneth Branagh's like his ode to his childhood in black and white. Like all these different types of movies, you know, a 3-hour Japanese film,
Right.
and like completely different styles and genres, and you should be celebrating them instead of like trying to dunk on them. And even like ones that are not nominated, like The Last Duel. Like,
pretty incredible. The Last Duel jokes were so, I mean, like such an easy joke to make and just the wrong movie. Like we said, it's actually like really good and people who saw it like really liked it. And I don't know. It's just not what you want. It's just a
yeah,
bummer.
and then well, the other thing about like celebrating, you know, obviously they cut the 8 categories this year, and in like these old ceremonies, they did it for some of the categories here. Like you talk about how, you know, they did the interpretive dance for song or score nominees, and they've done the fashion shows for costumes before. And when they're presenting some of these craft categories, when they did visual effects, they showed like behind the scenes footage of how all these teams like put all this stuff together, you know, like creative visual effects. You could at least show that.
I
Like
just,
when you're
and I think it
presenting
would be
the
like
nominees.
interesting. Like, wouldn't you be
Yeah.
interested to see that? Like to celebrate the movies. And again, like we're talking like obviously like the current, this year's Oscars, like an edict was get more people to watch. And they, from a bare minimum, they did do that. But I don't know, like this is a show, obviously different time and like different kind of people, way people watch TV. 44 million people watch this. That's insane compared to like what we see now, even for like anything popular. But the show is super entertaining. Like we said, those Beauty and the Beast numbers are incredible. And like a lot of the stuff they're doing like is sticky. And I think would have gone in modern times would have gone viral, right? Like the Billy Crystal, like Hannibal Lecter thing would have been like a moment. And like you could do it and still celebrate the movies. I don't know. But
Yeah, it's also, I think it's interesting because you can watch these clips from 30 years ago now, and I don't know who's going to be watching clips from this year's shows in 30 years and being
I
like,
mean,
I
I
missed
could think
this.
of one. I could think of one clip they'll be watching, Joyce.
Yes, but I'm talking about like the winners and like the performances.
Couldn't even tell you one meaningful thing about the performances.
No, yeah.
So
What happened? I just remember one thing from this year's show. That's all. That's
there's definitely
it's still
one.
not over. There's a meeting tomorrow, isn't there?
Yes, on Friday. We're recording this Thursday.
He
There's
moved it
definitely
up.
one thing I will never forget seeing from this year's Oscars.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we'll do this again, Joyce. So this was the Oscars Playback, we called it.
Yes, not re-Oscarables or whatever.
See,
I can't even
re-Oscarables just
pronounce
rolls
it.
off the tongue. It's such a great
Sure.
re-Oscarables.
That'll just be the subtitle. Okay.
Yeah, sure. All right. I see you later.